Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here, Mr. Moderator, and I know we have regulators and the people from stock exchanges. And as I wrapped up, I recognize we have people from around the region, so I need to make sure that I speak to as many of those markets as possible. But it's great to be here, and you know, when Mrs. Street Forest asked me to speak October or November, and I said yes, and then a few weeks ago looked at the topic I had to work with, and I thought for a while that because I spoke also at the Human Resource Management Association, I maybe had the topics mixed up, and then it got even scarier when I saw that I was the last speaker, because I figured either I was going to be seen as the person who kept you away from your families for or whatever activity we have afterwards, or hopefully, if I do my job right, an opportunity to wrap things up and have some thoughts into how we take it all forward and make some changes in our individual markets and in the region. As the Prime Minister on Tuesday evening indicated, I think the agenda and what we've gone over has been particularly timely for the challenges that we're facing. And we've covered an awful lot of ground. You know, we had Minister Shaw, who actually didn't give me too rough of a time. He always does when I'm in the audience, take shots at me. But he talked about the challenges and the opportunities brought about in Jamaica after the Jamaica debt exchange, and how we can use the stability that we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months especially, and use it to help moving the economy forward. And we heard from former Prime Minister V.J. Patterson talk about the imperative that as a region we look at assisting in the development of Haiti, but recognizing that over the first year there hasn't been much that's been accomplished. And he talked about what he saw as the reasons for that and the actions going forward. And I know you talked about agriculture and an industry that impacts so many people across the region, and how we get it revitalized through technology, and knowing Chris Levy no doubt talked about the need for more marketing in the region, the need for linkages with tourism, the challenges with manufacturing. And I mean, I speak with the Manufacturing Association all the time, and know that they've got some real challenges and what incentives are needed to get them going. And we talk about innovation in the capital markets, and the discussion about the regional stock exchanges and regulation. You know, through all of the deliberations, no doubt a lot of good ideas stimulating a lot of meaningful discussion. But as we leave this conference, the reality is we're going into a 2011 that still has an awful lot of challenges. Jamaica, which I will refer to obviously because it's the market I'm currently in and know the best, but Jamaica and the entire Caribbean region continue to operate in a global environment that's facing a lot of challenges. While there's some encouraging signs in the US, Canada, and Europe, a lot of economists will tell you that they don't expect strong growth. And so we can't expect huge lift out of those markets. And while there has been strong growth in China, in India, and other of the large developing markets, our linkages in the region with those markets are not yet the strongest. While we're working on them, they're not yet the strongest, so we don't see that flow through as well. Our economies continue to be heavily reliant upon tourism and remittances, and are vulnerable both to environmental shocks, hurricanes and earthquakes, as Haiti saw, and also economic shocks, because we're very dependent upon commodity prices. Fortunately, Trinidad has on one of those commodities works the other way, but throughout the region, commodity prices can have a significant positive and negative impact on our economies. And if we're honest with ourselves, across the region, we haven't achieved what I'm sure our leaders 20, 30 years ago thought we would in terms of poverty reduction across all of our countries, in terms of wealth distribution. We continue to have underfunded education systems, inadequate medical services available to most of our people. We have a lot of our markets that have suffered from poor financial management, not always the best fiscal discipline, and excess of bureaucracy. We have crime issues across the region, and speaking to our last topic, across CARICOM we still seem to spend more time arguing over what I see as small differences and less time looking at what the commonalities are and how we can achieve success for all parties. I continue to be absolutely amazed that in 2010 we had some people in Jamaica who would prefer to have had a hedge fund out of New York that has absolutely no concern about the region take an equity stake in Air Jamaica rather than our brothers and sisters in a fellow CARICOM country because of what I believe are a lot of emotional infighting within the region. I think fortunately saner minds prevailed and realized that it's better to have someone who knows you than someone who don't, that you're partners with. But faced with the challenges, there's two responses that we can make. The easiest, and that which I think most people tend to without a lot of thought, is to complain about the problem and look at who we can point to blame for the problems. You know, we hear it all the time. If only the government would cut down on bureaucracy, we'd be able to invest more in our companies and invest more in Jamaica. If only JPS would lower power costs, you know, we'd be able to expand our companies more. If only the banks would lower interest rates, we'd be growing the economy 3 or 4%. And if only the private sector would stop clamoring for handouts, we'd be able to invest more money in education and health and all of those great things that as a government we need to do. It's always easier to point a finger at someone else and say what others should be doing. This deflects attention from what we're doing, and that choice of a reaction allows us to avoid responsibility and certainly avoid any accountability for our actions. But the second option we have in this situation is to look honestly at ourselves and say, what can we do to have an impact on the challenges that we face? Now, none of the challenges we face can be solved by any one sector, whether it be the government, whether it be private sector, labor, civil society. It requires that we all examine what we can do and look for opportunities to work together. We need to accept responsibility for our actions and be accountable for the outcomes of those actions. It's only when we hold ourselves accountable that we have the right to hold other people accountable, to point that finger at other people. And the reality is, if you look around the world over centuries, truly great change, transformational change, only happens when a few individuals, leaders, are prepared to come up with a vision, hold themselves accountable for doing what they have to do to accomplish that vision. No great achievement has been realized by people pointing fingers. It's only when our leaders come together, make sacrifices for the common good, for the good of our country and the good of our region, that true transformation does happen. Now, if we're to be transformational leaders, and that's the subject that I've got, we must start with a vision of what we can become. And I believe Jamaica and the Caribbean can achieve its goal of becoming a region of sustained economic growth where the well-being of all of our people improves, wealth is distributed better, that we can provide better quality of life for our people, better education, better health care, better social services. I believe as a region that we can expand our tourism product, that we can move up market, that we can become more experience-focused, so there can be more value added, that we can touch more areas of our economy. I believe that Jamaica and the region can build on its amazing brand, a brand that's known around the world, leverage the warmth and personality of our people, and become the leading near-shore destination for North American and European travelers to receive a vibrant cultural experience in a warm and relaxing setting, and receive exceptional customer service. I believe that we can diversify our economies beyond tourism and remittances by leveraging our proximity to North America, which is still the largest economy in the world. We have an educated, English-speaking workforce, warm and inviting geography. I believe we can leverage all of that to identify and build new industries. I believe we can invest the earnings from those industries into expanding and improving education, healthcare, all of those things that governments and society seek to do. I believe that we can improve the efficiency of both our public and private sectors with proper training, prudent investment in technology, re-engineering business processes and government departments. And as the economy grows and unemployment falls, tax compliance improves, I believe we can invest more money in security and we can see crime rates come down. I do believe we can stop bickering between countries and improve the effectiveness and efficiency of CARICOM, recognizing that we all do better if each of us succeeds. I believe, and this is something we're striving within Scotiabank regionally, I believe using today's technology that we can operate as, let us face it, globally we're a small economy as a region, that we can operate just as efficiently as if the water was not between us. And through doing that, we can be more efficient, we can avoid duplication, and we can lower the cost of providing, whether it be private sector services, government services across the region. And I believe if we can leverage all of our cultural connections and our geographic proximity with Haiti, and that we can play a role in helping our brothers and sisters there as the international community tries to rebuild that country. I honestly do believe that all of this is possible and can be achieved over the next 10 years, but it will not be achieved by pointing fingers, but only if true leaders work together and everyone pulls their weight. To achieve true transformation requires that we translate our vision into actionable plans and that we have discipline in executing those plans. Governments need to take bold decisions that are necessary to deal with the structural issues in our economies. The public sector needs to become more efficient and focus on those services that really improve the well-being of society: education, healthcare, social security. And while it's unrealistic to ignore the political realities, we have to be making hard decisions that are good for the medium and long term in our countries and our region. When occasionally politicians abuse their power for their own good, their colleagues need to point them out and refuse to allow them to govern. On the other hand, the private sector needs to support the government when they take decisions that are in the best interests of the country, even when it means short-term negative impact on the private sector. We need to support efforts to simplify tax and duty structures, even if it has some negative impact on some of us in the short run. We need to honestly file our taxes and pay our fair share of government revenues. We need to recognize when governments do make good decisions, and we need to hold them accountable for acting on those decisions. All of us in the private sector need to spend less time talking about the problems and more time working on solutions. And the financial sector, we need to play our role as well. We need to understand our role of maintaining security of people's savings and investments and being a conduit to get those funding into the productive sector and to individuals who have an acceptable level of risk. Labor unions and the labor sector needs to understand that there has to be a connection between wages and productivity. We operate in a global environment. We cannot, if it costs us more to generate $1 worth of output than our competing countries, we will not see our economy expand. There is nothing wrong with raising wages as long as productivity improves. Now, after living and working in the Caribbean for 20 years and in many jurisdictions in the region, I know